how do you decide internally what is or is not open source? How do you determine what Cloudinary is going to manage versus like what you're going to help with but is managed by the community?
In my role, I work with a lot of code-oriented stuff on the overall developer experience and DevRel teams. So you'll see me around the community chatting with people, but I'm also more focused on the code-oriented stuff. So building SDKs, code examples, demos, all those kind of things, content. So taking like your standard 16:9 images, make it a square for Instagram, or I don't think it's quite a square anymore, right?
Right.
Then make it the 9:16 for TikTok or whatever, or YouTube
Yeah.
Shorts, right? So like being able to do that just on the fly with a few URL parameters is again pretty compelling.
Obviously generative AI and everything is such a hot topic right now, right? But
Yeah, and like AI is interesting because I personally think like there's too much fluff kind of out there, and
mhm,
just throwing a chatbot and everything. But the thing that I find interesting is a lot of the AI work that we're doing is actually kind of compelling, and you could see it actually helping your workflow becoming more efficient.
welcome back to another episode of This is Tech Talks. I'm Jay Bell, one of your hosts, and today I have with us Santosh. Santosh, how's it going today?
Really tired. I was actually migrating Webpack 4 to 5 yesterday, and like it's an Angular app, old Angular app with Angular JS and Angular plus Webpack 4. It was a mess.
Oh,
So I woke up tired, and now I fixed it somehow. But yeah, I'm still tired.
I'm
So, are
surprised.
you saying that upgrade is the equivalent of a hangover?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
a
Yes,
developer
it is.
hangover. I love it.
Yeah.
That's so amazing. Well, this is episode 7 of the series for this season. Today we have with us Colby. Colby is the Director of Developer Experience Engineering at Cloudinary. Colby, do you want to just say hi and give yourself a little introduction?
Hey, yeah. So, in my role, I work with a lot of code-oriented stuff on the overall developer experience and DevRel teams. So you'll see me around the community chatting with people, but I'm also more focused on the code-oriented stuff. So, building SDKs, code examples, demos, all those kind of things, content. But then I also do some content on my side. I have my YouTube channel and blog, and just trying to help the dev community build awesome stuff.
Amazing. I love it. So do you actually work on building some of the Cloudinary SDKs then, or like you write some of the code for them?
Yeah, so it's an interesting point of discussion for how things are currently working. So there's kind of two paths of what an SDK looks like currently with us, where we have our primary product team, where I'm technically on the product team, but the team that works on the SDK is on the product team, and then the developer experience team, which is what I am currently working on, where we focus more on what we call community SDKs, and that's where the SDKs I work on fall under. So the primary one that I'm working on is the Next.js SDK, where then I've worked to kind of abstract that SDK in a way that we're feeding that into also a Nuxt and a Svelte SDK that community members are helping me maintain that. We support it, but they help us maintain it, so that we can try to build as good of experience as we can.
That's awesome. So at Cloudinary, I don't know if you can speak to this or not. I hope you can. In terms of like open source, obviously you guys sounds like you guys are heavily involved in open source. Managing these SDKs and these different packages via the community or for the community kind of thing, right? How do you decide internally what is or is not open source?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I don't necessarily have insight into the core business logic and like the things that kind of center around that. But generally speaking, all of our SDKs, or at least the vast majority of all the SDKs, are open source and are maintained through open source.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of the core logic and stuff that goes on. From my perspective and my point of view on the projects that I work on, I'm pretty much open source first, and I haven't really come through a use case where we've had to not go open source first. So primarily, I want to make sure try to keep open as much as I can.
Nice. Yeah, that seems to be like kind of the general pattern with our industry, right? Is like any SDKs people are using are typically open source. Like anything that
Yeah,
the will exist on someone's machine is generally open source, right? It's kind of
yeah,
like the
yeah.
pattern. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But I also try to extend that through like applications, and I know simple demos, but also somewhat larger scoped applications that I build that might use the Cloudinary product to do something interesting.
Hmm.
For instance, I created a project called Image Carbon where it'll scrape your website, provide the estimated CO2 that the website's using in images, but that's fully open source. And any other project that I would create similar to that would be open source as well. Um, just to provide example of usage, but also if people are interested in exploring how those kind of things work.
But how much CO2 has image carbon used by scraping other people's websites and loading all their images?
That's a good question, and I should put that. I should put that as a stat on the website. You
Just like a
use carbon
counter that
for
keeps on
yeah.
ticking.
That's a great point.
Oh man, that's funny. Um, so you said that you work with the community on some of these SDKs, right? I think you said the Svelte and the Nuxt one, or
Yeah.
Nuxt, right? You guys manage the Next.
Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
the maintainer of Next.
Yeah. Okay.
We have Jakub Andruski, hopefully I pronounced his name wrong, right, correctly, who's working on the Next version, and then currently Matias Hernandez, who's working on the Svelte version. They all are relatively in parity between each of them, where the Next.js one was the original one, and I'm trying to basically replicate that model through the other ecosystems in more of like a framework first perspective, where traditionally a lot of the SDKs that we have from the internal team are more language specific, or so we do have a React one, but I'm speaking more towards like Next.js, SvelteKit, those kind of things.
Like the meta frameworks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there like is there a core package that each one uses, and then you're building just like a meta framework specific wrapper kind of thing?
Yeah, so part of what I did with the Next.js library is I eventually got to a point where I wanted to start replicating it through. So I abstracted the logic that pulls that together. So the way that it currently works is we don't maintain the core logic of the image component itself. And what I mean by that is Next.js has their own image component, and it's pretty great. So why
Mhm.
try to recreate that? So what I'm actually doing is wrapping the Next.js image component where I pass in what's called a loader function. So it's basically, it tells me what the width and the height is, or width and height is. I return a Cloudinary URL. So basically, I take their existing props and just use Cloudinary tech, but I can extend that then adding my own props to add things like transformations, like background removal, AI generation, those kind of things. So I have that ultimately abstracted into a function, which then each of those meta framework SDKs can use in their own way.
Nice. Yeah. I know we have a lot of Angular listeners because Santosh and I are both Angular GDEs, and Angular
Yeah.
actually has a Cloudinary loader function built into its image directive, which was built by the Aurora team at Google. And I think they
Oh, I
worked
didn't
on
know
the
that.
original Next. Like, I think they built the image optimization
Yeah.
directive, or whatever you want to call it, for Next first, and then they did Angular afterwards.
That's interesting. I didn't realize I've only mostly heard of the work that they've done in the Next community, and I think they're investing in Astro now too. So that's cool to hear that they're doing it in Angular. But I know we have an Angular SDK, and probably because we already have an SDK, probably won't create one there unless another
Mhm.
use case kind of provides itself. But um, it's it's interesting to see that they're investing in that angle from it as well.
Yeah, they have a built-in. Oh, the page, of course, just scrolled right to the top while I had it open. You can build custom ones, but they also have Cloudflare, the image resizing, Cloudinary
Hmm.
Image Kit, Imgix. I don't actually know how to ImageIX. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Imagix, yeah, I'm not sure.
Imgix, sure.
Yeah.
And then Netlify are all the built-in loaders that they
Oh,
have in the
interesting. Okay.
framework. So you can just like use the Cloudinary image stuff just like built in, which is really awesome. So you guys don't even need to maintain it.
Yeah. The only thing that's one, yeah, I won't even say a downside is if I'm not mistaken, usually those kind of patterns cover more of the basic use cases. And what I
Mhm.
mean by that is like some of the resizing, which is fantastic. But part of the beauty of what we can provide with Cloudinary is like a lot of transformations on top of that, and that's really what I'm trying to capture in um, the meta framework components that I'm building. So like dynamic cropping, resizing. I mentioned like
Mhm.
you have generative fill, background removal, recoloring things. Just basically like a little mini Photoshop in a component, if you will.
Yeah, That's really cool. Well, on the Angular website, right beside the built-in image loader, it does link directly to your documentation.
Oh,
So
cool. Okay.
I would suspect it supports whatever the inputs are to whatever the endpoint is that you would use. I don't actually know how Cloudinary works, but
Yeah,
I would think that they've kind of pulled in the properties that are available
that's pretty cool.
because there's no notes about what's not supported. So anyway,
Yeah.
just a fun little fact there.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. The image optimization is a very interesting, you know, area of web development for sure. Right? There's so much to think about in terms of like how you load it, what size, like when, all of these like micro little optimizations around tags and all that kind of stuff. Oh, question for you. So the SDKs that you use for like all these meta or manage, I guess, for all these meta frameworks. Obviously, these meta frameworks all have SSR, I would think, right? So
Yeah, so it's really the same as what the components would be out of the box. So that's a good question because I would imagine some of it depends on what it is. I think more like it renders on the client or it renders on the server, but there's certain things that would be provided on the client afterwards.
mhm, yeah,
Like Next.js image component is specifically a client component because it needs to use some client APIs for things like air handling, like it has an air handler and
gotcha.
onload event, those kind of things. But like the core image should be able to be fine SSR'd. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. The reason I was asking is with the Angular one, and I think it's loader independent, is that on the server when an image is pushed through the loader, it'll actually automatically add some like preload tags, some
Mm,
link tags that do the pre-connects, and it'll do that for you automatically.
yeah.
Again, loader independent. I was just wondering if your guys' stuff does that too. It's like, oh, this loader was used. I know the client's going to render this, so let's actually just insert a link tag that's a preload into our head.
Yeah, that's a great question. The next image component does that out of the box, and that's one of the things that I don't have to manage. Now, from
Nice.
the Svelte and Nux perspective, they both currently wrap a library called unpick inside
Oh,
of
okay.
components. Reason being, Next image just doesn't support the pattern that we're trying to promote. The idea would hopefully be able to use Next image if we can use it.
Mhm.
Svelte until recently didn't have they have an image enhancement thing, but I don't think it's necessarily something that we could utilize in the way that we're trying to.
Right.
But I don't think Unpick would have. I may be wrong here. I don't think Unpick has the ability do to add the preload tags. But again, I might be wrong. I need to look into that.
Yeah, that's fair. Really, yeah, anyway, it's just I was curious if you were doing all that kind of stuff. Sounds like Next
Yeah.
does it all automatically, which is really awesome.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things is I can focus on what makes my component special rather
Mhm.
than having to recreate all that stuff under the hood. And they're pushing on the barrier on what they can do on it. Same similar to any other framework like Angular as well. But it means that I don't have to maintain that, and I can maintain the special parts around it.
It's amazing when it works out like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I've heard of Unpick before. I think Unpick was one of the suggested ways to do these different types of image optimizations before Angular had its image directive because
Okay.
it's relatively new. I think it was like mid last year kind of thing that it got introduced.
Oh,
So
interesting. Okay.
yeah, it's relatively new.
Yeah, Unpick's from Matt Kane, who is over at Netlify, and he does it.
Okay.
I think he was also one of the people responsible for the Gatsby image way back when. So he had some experience doing that kind of thing.
He's been around the block once or twice
Yeah,
in
yeah.
terms of image
So
optimization.
he's put together a great package with Unpick.
Right. Yeah. Um, where I was going with that question all the way back like 15 minutes ago was these different SDKs that you are involved with. Um, how do you like obviously some are community managed and then some are managed by you with the support of the community and stuff like that. How do you determine what Cloudinary is going to manage versus like what you're going to help with but is managed by the community?
So currently, the way that we have our core set of libraries, and I would imagine some of it is what customers are requesting. And we just historically have a list of a bunch of SDKs, and we have pretty broad coverage over what we support. But we've never supported meta frameworks through the core SDK channels. So the meta framework oriented stuff is a somewhat new concept that I really picked up from products like Clerk, who just it made the integration just so painless to be able to have framework first components. So I wanted to be able to replicate that experience using Cloudinary. So that's where I started picking up with Next Cloudinary. And now that we are kind of working through this challenge, I try to look at community usage because we're a small team. So I'm trying not to, just drop as many different SDKs as I can. I want to make sure we can realistically support them. I'm trying to lay more groundwork to make that easier so we can eventually support more frameworks. But it's really trying to look at what communities we think are growing, and some of it's taking a bet as to what we think might grow quicker than others. I know we have our eyes set on a particular one or two that we want to move to next, but trying to make sure that we don't just jump the gun and resource wise that we can support everything we release.
Can you talk about the ones that you're thinking of targeting in the
Yeah,
future?
so Astro is the one that's top of mind for me.
Right.
We don't have anything in particular out in the open for it yet, but I would expect it to be relatively painless to put together. I've been doing a lot of core work on that shared library that I was talking about
Mhm.
to so not only for the image component to be able to easily compose those URLs and stick them in, but also the other components, because we have wrappers around what we call widgets. So there's like an upload widget, there's a video player, and currently all that logic is duplicated between the different code bases, and there's a lot of copy and paste. So I want to also abstract basically prop builders, where given a set of props, create this custom, or not customization, configuration to initialize those widgets, just to make that as painless as we can, and then the maintainers can manage the framework specific stuff that needs to go on between those.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, for sure. Astro is an interesting one because correct me if I've never used Astro, but from what I've seen online, you can use other frameworks within Astro or something.
Yeah, that's one of the beauties with it. So I mean, technically, like, you can use the Cloudinary React SDK, the Vue SDK, right inside of a Astro project already. But
Mhm.
like, the goal would be to use it in Astro specific component files, where I would think, more often than not, uh, they should get you most of the way, unless you need to do some more advanced usage, or you just have a preference of using one of those UI libraries. So being able to provide an Astro native component is kind of what we're after there.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In terms of open source and where Cloudinary is going with it, is there anything, you have obviously already talked about the Astro SDK and these things that you're already working on that are already released, but do you guys have a plan for other contributions or projects or whatever it might be for the future that you want to publish or bring to the community?
Yeah, I mean, so I think a lot of the work that I'm doing is focused around these sorts of projects. We're building these SDKs and kind of share the plan around that, creating more demos and sample applications, not only just to use Cloudinary, but creating kind of larger scope projects. I've always had this idea in my mind of creating a working e-commerce store where I can just sell some cool shirts at cost, just to prove like all the pieces working together, including Cloudinary, of course.
Mm,
But things like that, we want to continue to be more involved in the community and pushing hard on trying to incorporate that as much as we can. We did Hacktoberfest for the first time officially this past year, and I want to continue working on getting more involved with that kind of thing, um, and just trying to cater and do as best as we can by the community as we can.
yeah, it's amazing. All the power to you for sure. Um, Uh, what was I going to ask? There's something about demos or projects. Are you working on any cool demos of Cloudinary stuff right now? Because you said that's kind of like part of your roles, like putting these examples and demos and stuff like that together.
Yeah, so I am working on one. It's a application that I'm also ultimately going to release as a free code camp tutorial. I'm gonna keep it a little hush for now,
Okay.
but it's coming, and I'm excited about it. And there's another one. It's basically like an image optimization wrapper. I don't know if you've ever seen like tiny ping or those kind of things. It's something similar to that, but I'm just trying to create like a nice UX around it. Something that uses Cloudinary tech, of course, as just a way to easily, what would I want out of an image optimization tool for just drag and drop on the web? So basically creating that for fun.
Gotcha. And this would be a tool that I could just go to the website and upload like a massive PNG and be like, I want it in a small WebP kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay,
And I'm
cool.
still trying to figure out like the restrictions around that because, and what I mean by that is, of course, it costs money to do those things. So how can I both provide it without being too restrictive, but also so like the ultimate idea behind that kind of tool would be, oh, you want to do this in a programmatic way? Well, check out the API. That API is Cloudinary, but the core tool would be free to an extent, right? It's not
Right.
go there and upload your entire hard drive of photos there and have them all optimized, but trying to do it in a in a balanced way.
Yeah. You just need to sell user data. That's how people make money nowadays, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I will say I'm not selling. Well, I'm not selling user data.
You heard it here first, folks. Your images are safe with Colby.
One
Go ahead,
question
Michael.
from Kobe. I mean, yeah, of course, we talked about the SDKs and everything, but what is like if someone has to use these image optimization or video optimization things which you have, like what is your selling point, right? Why should people do that?
Yeah. So that's an interesting point because optimization is kind of commoditized in the, especially in the image world, right? Video, not so much. I think there's a compelling reason to use Cloudinary optimization for videos because that doesn't really that doesn't exist out of the box like it does for the other tools that we have. But for images, I think the more compelling parts is the transformations that you put on top of it. So things like dynamically cropping and resizing at scale, and bold at scale. So like one of the use cases I like to think about is imagine you have an e-commerce store with like 10,000 different products. You want to have them all nicely appearing in a grid on your on a grid list, a product listing page, right? You're not going to want to have to manually go through and crop and resize all of them. Thinking about the processes that go behind that. Of course, you can have some scripts, but is that going to scale the time that you have to put into that, all the resources to do that? Where with Cloudinary, you can just add a couple URL parameters, or in this case, add a prop and say that you want to crop it in this perspective. It'll use AI to automatically detect where that object is in the photo so that you can so it's not just like cropped halfway between a person, right? It's like actually shifted over and things like that to make it easier to work with these tools at scale. That also includes background removal. Say you want them all to appear uniform, have them all use the same background or lack of background. You can easily add the background removal on top of that. Say you want to, instead of cropping them inwards, you want to crop them outwards. So you can use generative fill so that it'll use AI to generate the rest of that image, right? And you can do that for all those images. So that's really kind of the benefit that you really start to see with these kind of tools.
Yeah, that's cool. That's so cool. I mean, that obviously generative AI and everything is such a hot topic right now, right? But
yeah, and like AI is interesting because I personally think like there's too much fluff kind of out there, and just throwing a chatbot and everything. But the thing that I find interesting is a lot of the AI work that we're doing is actually kind of compelling, and you could see it actually helping your workflow becoming more efficient, and also that's one thing that I'm having fun with as well.
yeah, I think this is actually like a really useful use case, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I can think of uses for it just sitting here, right? Where maybe you have it's in a photo uploaded by a user that's in one aspect ratio, but it's going to be displayed in a bunch of other aspect ratios across the site. So you don't have to restrict it to something, right? Like, for example, my company, we try to stick to 16:9 images throughout the application because it's just easier to dev that way, right? But in some cases you can't. You just can't. It doesn't work with, like, say, a mobile UI or whatever, right? You could crop it, or like not crop it, but like display it in something, but then fill the rest of it out. It's really cool.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is this applies to video as well. So a lot of the same APIs are with video as well. So one of my favorite use cases is social social media. So taking like your standard 16:9 images, make it a square for Instagram, where I don't think it's quite a square anymore, right?
Right.
Then make it the 9:16 for TikTok or whatever, or YouTube
Yeah.
Shorts, right? So like being able to do that just on the fly with a few URL parameters is again pretty compelling.
Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
wild, to be completely honest. Are there any other companies out there doing this kind of stuff like Cloudflare or Net? I guess I'll just read off the list: Cloudflare, Netlify, ImageKit, stuff like that. Do you know?
So let me start going through that list. Netlify has some of the basic capabilities, and I
Okay,
think that's what Cloudflare does as well.
right.
Like the resizing. I don't know if they provide any kind of cropping as part of that, but
Okay.
at a minimum, they provide the resizing.
Mhm.
ImageKit, I'm not too versed on their feature
Sure.
set. I think that they have some crossover with some of the stuff that we do. I don't think they do video. Not just because of their name, but I don't think they do video, but I might be mistaken.
They actually
Um,
do. I just pulled it up.
do they?
Image transformation, or sorry, video transformation, video optimization.
Nice.
Bunch
Okay.
of words I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think a lot of the times it's just going to be you know, what features you care about.
Mhm.
There's going to be a difference in quality between the different products that
Of course.
you choose. And I'm not going to come up here and, of course, I work for Cloudinary. I prefer you to use it, but I'm not going to start putting down other companies as part of this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Wouldn't I would definitely would not expect you to. I don't see anything about any like generative AI on any of these other websites though. So like I
Okay.
think that's a really cool, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, obviously, by all means in the comments, but I think that's a really cool differentiator that you guys have where you can say like, oh, show this 16:9 image in 4:4.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I know
Or
I've seen background removal here and there on some of them, but I'm also not sure. Like, we also have APIs that provide analysis. And I know we kind of got off tangent on the open source and into just product
oh yeah,
features of
right.
Cloudinary, but like we also have some more like the analysis features. So one AI related one that I'm kind of excited about is you can generate captions from an image, and you can
Cool.
immediately see how that'd be interesting in a workflow where
Mhm.
one of the videos that I created to help kind of showcase that is user generated content again, where somebody uploads a photo, and say you have 1,000 customers uploading a photo on 1,000 different products. You don't want to have to manually write an alt text for each and every one of those, right? So as soon as it's uploaded, we'll generate an alt. That caption text for you, and then you can store it inside of the alt text so that when you're displaying on the page, there's some kind of accessible text there for people to have.
Oh,
People can still go through and review that, give it a quick eye, make sure that it's accurate because it's still AI, that it's still prone to little differences. But the amount of time that that's going to save you from having to do that manually is a lot.
wild. Yeah, especially with like user uploaded content, right? Like say like a website builder,
Yeah,
right? Where the users actually uploading their own images and they're building out their page, right? Like these people typically aren't super savvy in terms of like technical accessibility and all this kind of stuff, right? So like I would bet a lot of just average internet users don't even know what alt text is,
yeah, yeah,
right? So I think that's really cool that just the developer of the tool that the average user is using is handling that stuff for them via these
yeah,
APIs.
yeah. And it makes a big difference for the people who need it, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I was actually just helping my dad fill out a form yesterday for this investment opportunity thing. And he's like, he's red green colorblind. And we were going through this form and he's like, yeah, I just can't get it to submit. I was like, oh, that field is red right now. And he's
Oh,
like, I can't see that. I can't tell that that field's invalid. I'm like, no, that doesn't surprise me that, I was like, yeah,
yeah,
sites are just not that accessible nowadays, right?
yeah,
And I can only imagine how bad it is with images. If it's bad
right.
with text, it's got to be so much worse with images.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we also have an interesting feature. Again, another cloud area feature that you can one, you can do an accessibility analysis on it, but also you can preview it in the different um, the different color blinds. What's the word for it? Um,
Efficiency.
yeah, the different
Deficiency.
deficiencies.
Yeah,
So you can preview it in the different ones because they all look a little bit different, right? So it
yeah.
can help you to make sure that the images that you're using are accessible.
Whoa, cool. That kind of whole like colorblind, like, oh, just look at this thing and like what you see, it tells you like what you are. I'm like, that's just crazy to
Yeah.
me. Cool. Sounds like Cloudinary has a lot of really awesome APIs.
It does, and that's part of what makes it fun working there, because images and videos are the web, right? So being able to solve those problems and help people become more productive and build awesome things with those is it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, anything that you want to promote? Anything you want to shout out? Get people, knowing about?
Um, from a Cloudinary perspective, if you want to check out my open source library that I've been working on, next Cloudinary, or any of the others, Nux or Stealth, I would love to hear what you think about it. Always love feedback. Just from my personal perspective, check out my YouTube. I'm on Twitter, trying to share things to help you build better or cooler things.
And is your website yourname.com?
Yes. So I have my name.com, but also spacejelly.dev. Which is where I put my most of my tutorials.
I love that name, spacejelly.dev. So good. And then, yeah, for everybody listening, all of Colby's stuff will be in the show notes for you guys.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and then go check him out because it sounds like he's working on some pretty cool stuff, and I'm gonna have to check out some of it coming up here soon for sure. When I have some time. I'm like just getting settled in my new place right now. Like I found a couple more bags I need to unpack, and then I can finally like chill and get back to coding.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Any closing questions, Santosh?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to know, like, of course, we spoke about SDKs, but like how people can get started. Is there any payment required, or it's just like open for everyone? People can go and start hacking around.
Yeah, so we have a pretty generous free tier. So you just sign up. No, I don't think there's no credit card required for the free tier. Yeah, if you run into any issues, please hit me up. But yeah, we've had a lot of people who are happily running their personal sites, their personal blogs or whatever, using the free tier, and
That's nice.
it's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. Cool. Well, thank you, Colby, for taking the time to come on. This is Tech Talks this morning. Really interesting stuff that you guys are all working on over there. So I hope our listeners go and check it out. And maybe we'll have to have you back on once your secret project has been launched.
That sounds great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome. Thanks.
So just to announce, we are also doing this Learning conference, which is happening on May 16th and 17th. So go ahead and register for the conference. And Kobe, probably we will also love to like have you as a speaker, and we'll send the CFPs for sure. So it's a virtual conference. It will be 2-day conference, so everyone can join. And apart from this, like of course, we will be back next week again. Next week we are talking about how to contribute to Angular. Like maybe you are like reading a lot about Angular in last 1 year. Like people are crazy about it now, and they are also fighting about it. I'm not sure why, but they should not. just kidding. But yeah, we'll have Matthew, who is Angular contributor. He's an Angular core contributor, and he has been doing some amazing work around Angular. So he'll be joining us, and he'll walk us through like how you can also become an Angular contributor. So see you on the next episode. See ya. Bye bye.